Press record. All right, Ali, let me kick it to you.
Ready? Okay. Good evening, members, friends, and esteemed mayoral candidate. Welcome to the Eastern Island Democratic Association Mayoral Candidate Forum. My name is Afzal Ali Ansari, and I am honored to serve the president of the prestigious organization. Tonight, we gather for an important conversations about the future of our city. As a Staten Islander, we recognize the critical role that the next mayor of New York City will play in shaping policies that impact our communities, our families, and our livelihood. This forum provides a platform for us to hear directly from the candidate about their vision, priorities, and plans for addressing the challenges and opportunities ahead. Here's how the forum will proceed. Each candidate will be asked five identical questions. Five members of our executive board committee will take turn posing these questions to each candidate. Each candidate will have a total of 20 minutes to respond to all the five questions. We encourage all candidates to be direct, insightful, and engaging in their response. Likewise, we ask our audience to remain respectful and attentive as we listen to the perspective and ideas that will shape the future of our city. With that, let us begin our forum and hear from the individual seeking to lead New York City forward. Thank you. Now you can invite.
Thank you, Ali. Appreciate those remarks. So right at 7:20 sharp, we expect Speaker Adrian Adams. I don't see her in the waiting room yet, but as soon as she arrives, we will start. Each candidate will have 20 minutes. So as soon as she's done, the next candidate will begin. So for those of you who've been to, these in the past, it's a little bit touch and go. We'll have to see who's on time, who's running late, who's running early, but we have it right now scheduled. So each of the mayoral candidates has 20 minutes precisely. And everybody will be, like Ali said, subject to the same questions and approach. So everyone hang tight until Adrian Adams arrives. I've sent a note to her team.
And while we're waiting, the next meeting will be of S.I.D.A. The next general membership meeting will be April the 15th, tax day, and that'll be at Istanbul Bay on Bay Street, right across from the McDonald's. And the good news is Istanbul Bay has acquired a parking lot adjacent to it that will really aid us in getting parking. We don't have to fight for street parking. And so that'll be next April 15th, our general membership meeting. And what we will do is we will circulate information about what's going to happen at that meeting. We still have a few more candidates to talk to, and they would be the comptroller candidates and the public advocate candidates. So we'll work on something with that, and hopefully we'll get it done. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. We're up to 35 people. That's very nice.
Hi, who's 917-846?
Charles Rowland.
Oh, hey, Charles.
Who's this?
We're just waiting on the first candidate.
Okay, I'm not. Yeah. Who's the first candidate? Who's the first candidate?
Speaker Adrian Adams.
Okay.
It's interesting she's the last one in, and we don't want her to be the late Adrian Adams, but she's a little bit late right now, but hopefully she'll come in very soon. While we're waiting, I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Janos for lining up 7 candidates, working hard to get all of that done. We owe a debt of gratitude to Abelardo Alaman for doing not just one, but several flyers to accommodate.
Oh, it
Thank you.
looks like our speaker has arrived.
You got it.
Um, Madam Speaker, how are you doing? Can you hear us?
I sure can. Hi.
How are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us at the Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. We're thrilled to have you. You are
Thank
our
you.
first candidate to kick off this forum. So I'll just lay out very quickly how it's going to work. We have 20 minutes with you. We'd love for you to make an opening statement of a few minutes, and then we have up to 5 questions, time permitting, that our executive committee members have prepared for you. So with that, thank you so much for coming, and please take it away.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm Adrienne Adams. I am the Speaker of the New York City Council, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to be with you. As the first speaker representing a district far away from City Hall, I know the feeling of being overlooked and have been intentional about ensuring city investments controlled by the council reach Staten Island. I've ensured support for organizations big and small and allocated tens of millions of dollars for parks and schools, the College of Staten Island, Rumsey, and many other organizations. Personally, I was born and raised in a working class family in Queens, and both of my parents were union workers. I am a Queens girl through and through and have lived in the borough for most of my life. I'm also the first Black speaker, the first wife, the first mother, the first grandmother to lead the city council, and I really didn't spend years planning to run for mayor, but after being encouraged by many diverse leaders across our city, I felt I needed to step up at this point. It is very chaotic and it's a very scary time for a lot of people. And so I recently launched my campaign to become New York City's first woman mayor. I believe the question, though, in this election is what type of leadership do we want to be in the face of New York City at a time when workers and civil rights and our city's very independence are under attack by the federal government. We should all be judged not just by what we promise now, but what we've actually done before. So there's one candidate that's telling us that he alone can save us from our problems like the mental health crisis on our streets and the homelessness crisis across our city. But this individual was in charge of a state, and what did he do when he was in charge? He's actually the one that helped to create the problems that we're having. Along with that, we have a mayor currently who called himself a working class mayor when he campaigned for the job. But I can tell you from my time as speaker, he didn't govern as a working class mayor when he had the job. He proposed budgets to close libraries and schools. Fortunately, under my leadership, the council stepped in to stop him. And at a moment in time where the federal government is violating New Yorkers' constitutional rights because of their political beliefs, we are facing 2 candidates where New York has a target on its back, targeting our schools and our communities with devastating budget cuts, stealing funds allocated to our city, cutting healthcare, school lunch, and food assistance. So neither our current mayor or former governor can stand up to say something about the federal government when this new president attacks our city and its people. So we've heard a lot of tough talk in this race so far, but we know that bullying people does not work And real strength is standing up to those with more power than you and actually winning. I'm the only candidate running for mayor who has negotiated a city budget by fighting to protect the needs of New Yorkers and facing down City Hall to do it. I've protected libraries from budget cuts, defended our child care system, and prioritized investments to improve our neighborhoods. I've done this by bringing people with different perspectives together in coalition to address issues that affect all New Yorkers. And this has helped advance solution to our housing crisis and to pass new laws that remove barriers to City FEP's housing vouchers, along with other achievements for New Yorkers. I'm actually running to return public service as a priority, to bring competent, ethical, and results-driven leadership to the mayor's office that puts the people first, not special interest. I want to make our city more affordable for families, our neighborhoods safer for everyone, expand opportunity, and protect our city from corruption. I will never, never hesitate to stand up to Donald Trump and protect New York's independence and our values. I've never lost sight of who I am. I'm just like you, and I'm running for mayor to empower all of us. My leadership unites people to work together. We're stronger collectively, and that's how we achieve results that improve lives. So my commitment to you is that there will be no drama, no scandal, no nonsense, just competence and integrity for working New Yorkers. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have everyone on mute, but you can see some people are clapping in the background. Our first question will go to Abelardo.
Good evening, Speaker Edwin. Thank
Good
you for
evening.
being here.
Thank you.
First question is, what is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in New York City, and especially in Staten Island, which has limited healthcare resources?
The mental health crisis is number one for so many of us. We've seen, quite frankly, Rikers Island used as the number one mental health facility in New York City, which is not working. It never will work, with over 6,000 people on Rikers Island, the majority of whom are diagnosed with mental health problems. What we have not done as a city, and again, the other side of City Hall, is truly prioritize mental health issues. As mayor, I plan to enact supportive housing for folks that need programs along with healing. We also have to return to psychiatric beds and opening up those beds for people with mental health crisis. We can't treat it like it doesn't exist. We can't treat it like it's something that we're going to snap our fingers and it's going to disappear. People need to be treated with care, with loving hands, by those respected professionals who know what they're doing. So I will expand mental health workers. We've got a pipeline right now that I'm proud of. I've always thought of CUNY as our pipeline to specialists, to those mental health professionals who can provide those services as well. So we will put the funding where it belongs, and that is through and to mental health services.
Great. Thank you. The next question comes from our president, Ali.
Ready? Good evening. Good evening,
Evening.
Speaker Adam. My
Good
name is
evening.
Ali. My question is, last year the city of yes became law, while Staten Islanders need more affordable housing. How would you address local concern about the law's impact on island infrastructure?
That's a great question, and thank you very much for that question. You know, the City of Yes has been one of the most difficult proposals to contend with, number one, to work with, number two. It is a proposal, quite frankly, that the City Council did not have to take up, but there was not going to be a way that with the homelessness crisis, people living on the streets, people living in our subways, that we could ever be a council that says no to providing people with places to live. And so I took a look at that initial proposal and I turned it into something else. I stripped that proposal and made it so that our communities had more of a voice when it comes to building housing, affordable housing. I mandated $5 billion be put into it, and we renamed it City for All. And that moniker hasn't really taken off because everybody's still, well, a lot of people, I don't know if you all are probably way too smart to still think the original proposal is what passed. That's not what passed. It was a brand new iteration of that. And we call it the City for All because that $5 billion now puts through the infrastructure that our boroughs need to make sure that that housing can be built safely. We put forth additional funds to make sure that we are protecting home ownership, which is something that's not spoken about nearly enough, as well as rental. We put forth additional funding through that $5 billion to give more towards CityFEP's vouchers so that people can protect themselves from eviction and have some place to live. That's something that the administration flat out and told us, no, we're not going to do it. Well, we said, well, it's the law. You have to do it. So, of course, we sued them and we're in court to make sure that they follow the law. So, the City for All was worked out through a consensus of our residents, our community boards, with partnership through uh, 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 city planning and others to make sure that the voices of our communities were heard. We need affordable housing. We cannot sit back and not do anything and watch this homelessness crisis increase for our city. So this is going to be a positive thing. If we build it, we have to build it affordably so that we can bring down the statistic of homelessness in the city, Staten Island included, because we're all included in this thing together.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank,
you.
thank you. Our next question is from our past president, Dennis.
Hello, Speaker Adams. We appreciate you very much, and
Thank you.
you are an icon. And I
Oh,
want to tell you, we have some icons like you in Debbie Rose and in Edwina Martin
yes,
and Michelle Ashenpong and some
indeed.
wonderful people on Staten Island who have
Indeed.
stood up. And so you're in good company.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. My question. Everyone knows that Staten Island is called the Forgotten Borough, right? As mayor, what is one commitment that you will make specifically for the people of Staten Island?
Excuse my dog. She gets very excited. Um, it- Staten Island should never ever be considered the forgotten borough. And my commitment to Staten Island is to raise your voices, to collaborate more with Staten Island to hear more of your concerns of what is needed on Staten Island. We know that your voices are loud. We know that your voices are strong, but we want you to be seen. And that is my commitment to you. I need you to be seen on the other side of City Hall, not just thought about as an afterthought. I come from Southeast Queens, and, some little pockets where I live, we feel the same way. Nobody hears us, nobody sees us. I tend to believe, though, with the council, this different council under my leadership, that we've somehow brought some of those quiet things into the light. We've taken the cover off of a lot of things that have been quiet that my predecessors and others have not thought of as priorities. And I'm really proud that under my leadership, we've brought some of those things out of the darkness into the light so that those things can be prioritized. Issues when it comes to things that nobody thinks about, certain health care, provisions for our children, food services in certain food deserts and food inequity. Staten Island's voice will be heard under this administration, under an Adrian Adams administration. You have to be. That is the only way for us to work together so that we can make this city the city that it needs to be, the city that should be a model for the nation, the voice for the nation. We don't have a voice without Staten Island. So we're going to make sure that Staten Island is no longer invisible.
Great, thank you. So we've just got about 5 minutes left, so maybe like 2 minutes each for these two questions, if that's okay, Speaker Adams. We got Richard up next, then Maribel.
Good evening. Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Great question. It's one that's on a lot of people's lips right now. And I get that a lot. I'm asked pretty much in every press conference that I'm in before my pre-stated meetings, what about the sanctuary city laws? And I say that the city council is not going to change the sanctuary city laws. They're put in place for a reason. And the way that ICE moves, those movements are already moves that ICE already has. I mean, they already have the authority that they need to handle violent offenders. When it comes to taking care of violent, they already have that authority. So what they want is extra authority to deputize the police department. And that is the part that we are not willing to bend with. Our migrants and immigrants are a part of the fabric of the city of New York. We will always protect them. None of us, myself included, came here off of the Mayflower. So we all come from different places that have to be celebrated, appreciated, and protected. And that has been my commitment as speaker. That will be my commitment as mayor. The sanctuary laws will stay in place, but ICE has to be true to who they are. If they want their authority, they need to use it as it is already woven into the fabric of the existing law. That is what they need to abide by.
Mm.
Hi, Maribel.
Hi, speaker. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So my question is regarding childcare. As
Yes.
you know, many families have this as one of their main struggles. Um, what is your commitment to making sure that every 3-year-old has 3K in Staten Island, and how will you be supporting families that need affordable childcare?
Great question. I am a grandmother with daughters in those situations, with a daughter that has had to give up a career to take care of her 3 children, and now they have a single income because they cannot afford childcare. So this is very personal to me. I keep on saying, well, I say it a lot, in case you all haven't heard me say it. My city council has legislated the way that we live in a most diverse, first ever women majority city council. Children and families' health, education, safety have all been on the front burner for the way that we've legislated. As mayor, it will take even more of a top priority for me because it's personal. City council, our funds are limited. Once moved over to the other side of City Hall where the money really is, I plan to have some type of a voucher system for those in need of childcare services, something that we can help to subsidize parents that need that extra help when it comes to making sure that their babies are taken care of, and so that the working women and men can go back to work where they want to be. Not that they don't want to be at home with their cute little bundles, but a lot of parents are waiting to just get back to work if they can afford that childcare. It is precious. It is a priority for me. So that is my commitment to maintain and keep. Because again, I'm the only candidate that's been already doing this work, partnering with these organizations, partnering with DOE and other places. The only one that doesn't need a manual or a tutorial. I'm going to start running on day one of becoming the first woman mayor of the city of New York, and we're going to expand on the things that we have already done and are currently doing.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that response and all of your time with us, Speaker Adams. We wish you good luck on the campaign trail and have a good night.
Thanks so much. Good night, everyone.
And I see that our next candidate, I believe, is here. Scott, do you want to turn your video on, or do we need to do that, Dennis?
Yes. Scott Stringer. Okay.
Are you bringing me to life?
We sure are.
Okay, so Scott, you have to unmute yourself. I think you just did. And
there you are. All right.
And now you good.
Now we're live. Well, thank you
Okay.
so much for joining us. Controller Scott Stringer. Welcome to the Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. It's great to have you here. The way we're doing this tonight is we've got 20 minutes of time with you. We'd love for you to take a couple minutes to make an opening statement, and then we have up to 5 questions to get through. So we'll let you pace yourself, and we'll have our various executive committee members pose those questions to you. So with that, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Janos, and it's nice to be back on Staten Island, kind of, right? But it's good to be Zooming with all of you today, and I'm really glad to have this conversation. Look, I'll cut right to the chase. This city is getting hit multiple ways. The Trump attack on New York is just even worse than it was during Trump 1, and the total dysfunction and corruption of this mayoral administration is really without precedent. We're going to need a mayor who's going to be able to put this city back together in a way that is inclusive, responsive, progressive, but also smart and strategic. And what I offer, which distinguishes me from the other candidates, is I have a record that is about competence and experience. And in every office I have held, I haven't just existed in that office, but in fact, I have made major, major change. When I was in the state assembly, not only was I probably the most liberal member of the legislature, but I was also somebody who ended MTC voting, did rules reform, and took on the entire political leadership. That was not easy, and at times it wasn't fun, but I made a difference, and it's been lasting. As Manhattan Borough President, I reformed the community boards. I went to a merit-based selection process for the first time. No more political hackery. In fact, I appointed the first Caucasian guy to a community board in Harlem, first African-American to a community board on the Upper East Side. I put labor people on the board because I understood that a labor community coalition had to exist, and I was effective. I expanded 3 universities in 8 years. And I learned that what really matters is not top-down leadership, but community collaboration, something that I believe is needed between City Hall and Staten Island. As the city controller, I did a couple of big things, and I'll talk about them, I guess. I don't want to take too much time, Janos, but I will say that I was the first controller to divest from fossil fuels, $4 billion, the first controller to divest from gun manufacturers, the first controller to divest from private prisons. And I did that while giving our pensioners a 9% rate of return, even during COVID.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I'll kick it to Abelardo for our first question.
Hey, Scott, how you doing, brother?
Hey, man, what's up?
I'm getting there. Stay tight. Here's one other question. What is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in your city, and especially on Staten Island, which has limited healthcare resources?
Look, every politician is going to come to you and say, we have to help people with mental health issues and help people, quite frankly, with disabilities. I'm reminded of the great quote, my favorite David Dinkins quote, when he talked about people with disabilities, and he said, we are all temporarily able-bodied. And my experience goes back to my earliest days when I was in the state assembly and chaired the task force on people with disabilities. That was like a task force you got because you couldn't get a committee chair, so you sort of got that committee, no questions asked. I went to work making sure that the disability committee would be heard. I literally navigated through every federal, city, and state office building in New York City, looking at ways to help people with disabilities. When I was chair of the task force, we looked at issues of job training and workforce development. And so I understood very much the needs of the community. I did the first audits of escalators and elevators, not when I was controller, but back in the assembly, because these elevators were broken and people with disabilities were getting stuck in the subways. But here's the thing. We now have a mental health crisis below ground. And I see it every day I take my kids to school. People there are living in the subways. And you know what? They're dying. I know it. I see it, and we have to change it. Eric Adams says we're going to align policing and mental health. Nothing happened. But here's what I'm going to do. We're going to make sure that we take that $1.3 billion in overtime that I identified, and we're going to ensure that we have more police in the subway to reduce overtime costs, because people think, well, you're going to hire more police. What does that mean? Well, that means we're going to pay less in overtime, right? And that overtime supplement that we save, I'm going to drive it into the biggest mental health initiative we've ever seen, to hire nurses, to work with our 11 public hospitals, to have a zero tolerance for people who are taken underground and up, and then come into the streets and left there if they're even lucky to get to a hospital. And in Staten Island, we don't have the kind of medical infrastructure that we need. And we should begin to build that out. And because I've served this borough for 8 years, I know the community, I know how to do this, I know the hospitals, I've been there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to kick it over to our president, Ali, for the next question.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing today? Good?
Mr. President, how are you?
Good, thank you. My question is, last year, the city of yes become law. What Staten Islander need more affordable housing? How would you address local concern about the law impact on the Staten Island infrastructure?
Well, look, the city of Yes will have, in the long term, I think, much benefit for the city. But here's my philosophy. A lot of people walk into communities and tell the community what to do. And that is not my approach. I believe in neighborhood planning and neighborhood participation. As an elected official, I'm not afraid of going into a meeting with 1,000 people who may not totally agree with me. In fact, I kind of like it. And that's how I've been able to work in all communities. You remember when I showed up as the new controller and we held hearings in Staten Island after Hurricane Sandy. I had no notes. I had no microphone. Nobody had an index card to write down their question. It was open mic for hours. And I went to every Sandy impacted area and listened to what people said. And then we did the report that showed that the reaction to Hurricane Sandy was about outside consultants messing up the work under the Bloomberg administration. I discovered that and made recommendations to change that because, unfortunately, because of climate change, the next storm is coming. Well, I tell you this because I think that the best thing a mayor can do is work with neighborhoods to solve problems. And we're going to have to work together on these issues. We need to build affordable housing. We need some density, but we also have to look at neighborhoods and say, hey, wait, hold on. We also have a set of problems. We also have a set of issues. There are appropriate places for development, and then there are places where we shouldn't be doing it. And as borough president, I learned the easy way. It is better to work with the community boards and the local communities than walk into a community and say, you're getting this whether you like it or not. It's just not what I believe. And I believe that affordability and housing development is not just about housing. It's also about building neighborhood and integrating communities. And there's no one in this campaign who has been to more community meetings, more community board meetings in a lifetime than me. I was appointed the first teenager ever appointed to a community board, made the front page of the New York Times below the fold. If I could say to you one thing I would take back in my life was I probably shouldn't have gone to a million community board meetings. There was probably other things I could have done.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we'll have our past president, Dennis.
It's nice to see you again, Controller.
Nice to be seen.
I know you've done a lot for Staten Island and wanted to just ask you this. As you know, and you've heard it many times for years, Staten Island is called the Forgotten Borough. And as mayor, what is one commitment that you will make specifically for the people of Staten Island?
I know that has been what people have said. But I think Dennis in particular, that I took Staten Island differently than most. Not only did I show up at civic associations and community boards, not only did I show up North Shore, South Shore, you name it, I was there. Not only did I walk the public housing developments in Staten Island, but I came and did work here. We looked at traffic. We looked at infrastructure. We toured the small businesses when we had my small business task force looking at ways to build and stop harassing local businesses. I've been to the 9/11 memorial many years and shared the joy and the sadness with the people in the community. So for me, this is not my first rodeo. I've been on the ferry. I've been at the subways. I've been in the community. And I also know that this borough is wonderful, friendly, inclusive, and is the backbone of so much of this city. I grew up in Washington Heights in the 1970s. Our neighborhood was kind of like many of the neighborhoods in Staten Island. You just got to know it. It's a special place, and I've been very welcome in Staten Island. And I did good in the last election in Staten Island, considering that was a tough campaign.
Awesome. Richard, you're up next.
Good evening. Um, do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Say that again, Richard. What was the first part?
Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
I do support this wonderful sanctuary city because no matter where you come from, and I really don't care where you come from, but once you get on New York City soil, you are a New Yorker. And our job and the job of the mayor is to do a couple of things in these hard times against Trump. First, we have to protect our people. It really breaks my heart that when I take my kids to public school, we see that attendance is down. And I know why attendance is down because people are afraid of losing their children or themselves to a middle of the night raid that could separate them from their families forever. I would freak out as a father of two kids who I love very much if there was even a hint that I could lose them. So what I want to be able to do is be the best mayor using every legal deployment to build the law department that's geared to this moment, to hold agencies accountable to this moment. You know, we need more Janos Martins of the world who are going to come in and be fierce advocates. I'm not promising them a job. I'm just saying the kind of people that we need who are going to come in and actually fight this fight. But there's a second thing too, and this separates me from some of the candidates. I mean, look, you know, it's great to celebrate that you discovered that Trump stole $80 million of our money and everyone was dancing around saying, you discovered it. But that's nonsense. What we should be doing, the mayor, the controller, all the elected officials, is we should be strategizing about how to deal with this. So if I were the controller or the mayor, I would have called Citibank in and every other bank that we deposit money in and said, no, no, no. You don't tell us after the fact that the money's being seized. You work with us in an early warning system because we need that early warning because these budget codes are complicated. You know, in a lot of the budget codes, you have city money, state money, federal money. We should be already wargaming what's coming our way. But I have called for Kathy Hochul in the state budget to put up $500 million. I've asked the city council and the mayor to put up another 500,000, $1 billion that we could put in a lockbox. It's not legal. I mean, it's not a legal lockbox the way we have our reserve funds, but we're going to need $1 billion, my estimation, to, as they steal our money, we have to replenish the money for essential services, for education, for lawyers, for the essential services, for homeless services. That is what we should be doing as a city apart from this campaign. And look, I did this work running for mayor in the middle of COVID. You know, I had to hold the line on de Blasio when he wanted to borrow $5 billion. And I asked him, why do you want that money? Because you're the boss. We're in an emergency situation. Tell me what the plan is. He said, well, I don't have a plan, but I should just have the money just in case. And I said, over my dead body. And we stopped him from doing this. We have to have the same aggressiveness I had when I was controller. You know, half these people have sleptwalked through the Adams administration. And I think we need a new energy at City Hall, someone who's no nonsense, who knows how government works, and spends the next 4 years not just building back the government, but reforming this government. It's in need of reform.
Great. Thank you so much. So this is our last question, and we got about 6 minutes left. So take your time with it. And Maribel, I will kick it to you.
Um, Good evening, Mr. Controller. Thank you for joining us this evening. So as you know, as a fellow New Yorker, childcare is one of the biggest issues that many working families have. As a mayor, what is your commitment to making sure that every 3-year-old in Staten Island has a spot in 3K? And how will you be supporting families for creating affordable childcare?
You know, it is a question that has such ramifications for the future of our city. It matters because for every child care slot, more parents, mostly women, will be still in the workforce. That matters. For every child in childcare, their learning accelerates. For every struggling person in the city and middle class person, if you can deliver childcare, 3K, baseline 3K and pre-K, and create a after-school program for our kids, this city suddenly becomes a lot more affordable. Here's how I would do it. I have a tri-share child care plan, and it's actually simple, but it's something I care passionately about. I believe that New Yorkers should not have to pay more than 7% of their income on child care. So I would cap it. If you make below the poverty line, child care should be free. And then the city, with existing subsidies and federal and state subsidies, should pick up the cost as well. So you make a contribution based on income, then the city kicks in for the cost. And then I'm going to do something with the private sector because they need to keep their workforce in New York City and they need to participate in this. And I'm going to ask them for a child care contribution, a three-way child care funding mechanism. And then when you look at the audits I've done and you look at my original proposal when I was controller, NYC under 3, we have to identify the childcare deserts. We have to make sure that the centers stay open, they don't close. And we also have to make sure that there's a predictable funding stream. And we have to make sure that the workers who are in these centers taking care of our babies are actually protected and that they have a living wage, a livable wage, that they feel rewarded, respected, so that they can go home and take care of their own children. You know, it's amazing that some of these workers are in the centers, they can't afford to take care of their kids. And I think we have to prioritize childcare because it has an economic ramification. It has a ramification for our kids. And look, I experienced this. You know, I'm an older dad. So when my wife and I, you know, had our kids, I mean, we had some money, but the childcare cost was exorbitant. My childcare plan would take an average of $19,000 per kid for childcare, would cut it 50%. We would shave off $12,000 during this. And, you know, again, a lot of people are going to tell you they love childcare, but I have been working on this issue for many, many years through multiple reports, and I've evolved my thinking about how to get it done. By the way, I'm going to give a shout out to Jessica Ramos because we stood together when she stood with me when I released my plan and I supported her legislation. We have to make sure we have legislative partners in Albany. So if she doesn't get elected mayor and she's a senator, if I'm mayor, I'll partner with her. If she gets elected mayor, I'll run for the state senate. I'll partner with her. But either way, I'm committed to getting this done. I'm not running for state senate.
Okay, well, we got 2 minutes left, Scott. If there's anything that you didn't get to cover that you would have wanted to, just want to give you your full 20.
Thank you. Well, again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Let me make the political pitch to a very smart political club. I believe this race is going to come down to Andrew Cuomo and myself. And if that's the race, I believe that I can beat Cuomo. I beat Spitzer with your help. In 2013, I was 20 some odd points behind as an unknown borough president, and I won the debates, made the arguments. I know how to prosecute the case against Cuomo. He should not be mayor. Chaos does not reward chaos. We need somebody who's the grown-up in the room, who has good values, understands how to govern, and is in this for the right reason. Look, I have skin in the game. As a lifelong New Yorker growing up in Washington Heights in the 70s, I knew a lot of my friends weren't as lucky as I, and they didn't make it. And I now have these 2 kids. I want them to make it. But I also have seen a lot of stuff in homeless shelters. I've audited a lot of bad situations. I know what this city needs, and we don't need performative governing. We need somebody who can be a mayor without training wheels. And I offer my candidacy on that basis, knowing I'm running against some very good people.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thanks, man. Talk to you guys. Bye.
All right. I don't see Senator Ramos in the waiting room. So just checking in with her team. So hold tight for a minute. Dennis, if there's any announcement or anything you want to make, we have a minute to spare here.
Well, I got to say that our new president, Ali, is our second president from India. He came here maybe over 30 years ago, made something of himself. He's incredible. And he's also the first Muslim president of S.I.D.A. Congratulations to him. And it proves the diversity of our organization and also of the Democratic Party and also of Staten Island. So it's a wonderful team that we have. And we could single everyone out from every organization and from every, ethnicity, but we'd be here all night. but that's just one example. Congratulations.
Ali, do you want to say anything as we wait for the next candidate?
Ali, you'd have to unmute.
He have to unmute it.
You're good.
Yeah, okay. So on our next general meeting, we have two things. Rich just sent me the email today. He wants to get, if we are supporting scholarship for Sally, so we're gonna put that one on the floor. Is it okay, Dennis?
Right, and also the Harambe luncheon, we're gonna send somebody from S.I.D.A. as we usually do, and also put an ad in. We'll put that before the body, later on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Janus, can you see the Senator Jessica, instead of Jessica, who is the next one? Michael Black? If he's available, you're welcome.
Yeah, I can look into that.
We can save some time.
Yeah, I can look into whether he'd be ready earlier. I'm just reaching it. Give me another minute.
Okay.
So one thing that's important, we got to keep the pressure on Maliotakis for a town hall. As you know, the Republicans nationally have told their members not to engage in town halls. Unbelievable, right? Democracy, and is leaving us fast. So we have to keep the pressure on and get out into the streets and continue to speak up. It's happening all over the world now. People are starting to react to this incredible President Musk and Vice President Donald Trump and the lackey, Vance. So, but we have to keep the pressure on, let people know that there's an alternative to that.
So good news, we have the senator. She's just she's at a hotel in Albany, right? Because she's upstate right now. So just needs to get onto her Wi-Fi. So that's what's taking her an extra minute, but she knows she's joining us, so we should see her momentarily.
Okay, good.
Looks like she's here.
She's in.
All right. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, can you hear me? Because I'm on
Yes.
Wi-Fi.
We can
Okay.
hear you and see you quite clearly. You're all good.
Excellent.
So thank you so much for joining us, Senator Ramos. Welcome to Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. We'll be with you for 20 minutes. We'll give you a couple minutes to do introductory remarks, and then we have up to 5 questions, time permitting, that our executive team is ready to ask you. So with that, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Hi, Staten Island. It's really nice to see all of you and to see the real diversity of Staten Island that I feel the borough doesn't get enough credit for. I'm New York State Senator Jessica Ramos from Queens. I'm actually in Albany right now because we've been hard at work trying to negotiate a budget that really addresses the affordability issues that we're seeing. And that's honestly why I'm running for mayor of the city of New York, is largely because I feel that corruption and incompetence have gotten in the way of our war on poverty. And I have really seen the war on poverty as my lifelong vocation. I worked in the labor movement for a very long time after I left the New York City Council during the Bloomberg administration. I'm a former member of the de Blasio administration and therefore the only candidate who has been a part of the mayor's office and has had a desk at City Hall already. And I, of course, am a four-term state senator who chairs the Labor Committee. I'm the senator who raised the minimum wage and tied it to inflation for the first time in history of New York State. I am the senator that negotiated the restructuring of taxi medallion loans. I'm the senator who has expanded eligibility for childcare from 275% to 400% of the federal poverty line. And I am hoping that as the next mayor of the city of New York, I can lend my expertise in building out universal pre-K to bring universal childcare finally into fruition. I want to bring mental health services into our public safety plan in a much more formal way. And I want to build workforce housing. And that to me is actually a big part of my plan for Staten Island. So I want to thank you all for taking the time tonight to meet with me, to meet with all of the candidates, and for loving our city so much that you're willing to take the time to meet us all and hopefully choose the best candidate for all of us moving forward.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us from Albany. We really
Can
appreciate
I
it.
ask,
Yeah,
is there a timekeeper or something that I should keep an eye on?
sure. Yeah, I'll let you know. I mean, that was
Okay.
good pacing. I'll let you know if we're like running low on time as the questions go on. So it's about, three minutes an answer basically to stay on track.
Okay.
Abelardo, you're up first.
Hola Jessica, bienvenido a nuestro club.
Gracias, Abelardo. Un placer verte.
De nuevo, siempre nos vemos en la ciudad. The first question is, what is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in your city, and especially on Staten Island, which has a limited healthcare resources?
Yes, Staten Island does have limited mental health care resources, and frankly, so does every other borough. And that's largely because former Governor Andrew Cuomo closed down our mental health facilities. And therefore, our New York City subways, our ferries sometimes, and even our streets have become the de facto mental health facility. And that's not okay because, of course, people who are struggling with severe mental illness can display very erratic and unpredictable behavior. And we really should be taking care of them before they hurt themselves or hurt someone else, as we've seen over the past few months and actually years. I'm actually the mother of two teenage boys who are starting to take the subway by themselves, which is very nerve-wracking personally because as much as you teach them to do the right thing, I always tell them to stay close to women on the subways when they're taking the 7 train into school. You never know how someone else is going to react, or if they're going to be in the wrong place. So I want to make sure that we are making the right investments and not only leaning on the NYPD to do this work. I think what we need to do is inject clinicians and mental health professionals into every aspect of our public safety. I want to be able to weave mental health services into our public schools, into our workplaces. I want to mandate that workplaces that have 50 or more employees have mental health services on hand. HR is not enough. And I want to make sure that we are reopening these facilities and restaffing them. But here's the challenge, because we actually don't have enough social workers, behavioral, and cognitive therapists available in New York City right now to actually do this work, and especially in the languages that New Yorkers speak. So while we leverage CUNY as our partner in building that workforce pipeline, I want to use workforce housing as a way to attract talent to New York City to help us address the urgent need, because we cannot wait. And it's actually why on my first day as mayor, I would like to call for a mental health emergency, because such an executive order would allow me as mayor to tap into different and more tools for funding so that we can get this started as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Ali,
you.
our president, has the next question.
Good evening, Senator Ramos.
Good evening, Mr. President. That's a nice plant.
Thank you. Thank you. Last year, the city of Yes became law. While Staten Islanders need more affordable housing, how would you address local concern about the law's impact on the island infrastructure?
Thank you for the question because I have big plans for housing for Staten Island. I actually see Staten Island as the borough to invest in, largely because you guys have a lot of untapped resources. And I want to go back to the way we used to build affordable housing even before the Mitchell Lama program, which I'm also a big fan of. Right now in the state Senate, I carry a bill that leverages union pension dollars with taxpayer dollars in order for us to go back to building not just affordable housing, but homes, communities that can include childcare and senior services, as a lot of these communities become naturally occurring retirement communities. And I'm talking about reviving the way we built Co op City in the Bronx, Electchester in Queens, Penn South in Manhattan, or Boston, Coney Island in Brooklyn. We can use this to not only build low income rental units, but also modest equity home ownership opportunities. Meaning that, as you know, if you have a middle class job and you have been able to save a little bit, you should be able to own a piece of New York City. That shouldn't be a far fetched notion, as it has become over the past few years. So, this is a way that I believe we can help our seniors age in place in naturally occurring retirement communities, but also a way to have workforce or housing incentives for a lot of the workforce that we do need to attract. Because right now in New York City, you already heard me talk about mental health professionals, but we also have a nursing shortage, we have a doctor shortage, we have a police officer shortage, and we have a firefighter shortage. Never mind all of the other civil service titles, for which actually I want to do away with the fees for civil service exams in order to remove that barrier so that more New Yorkers can find the opportunity to enter and stay in the middle class and be able to find a good union job, which to me is what defines Staten Island, frankly. And honestly, I know that Staten Island has many hardships because of the distance, because you're an island. But there are many ways in which we can bridge those gaps, and making sure that you are urbanizing where possible without displacing neighbors is really key.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Our next question will come from our past president, Dennis.
Hello, Senator. It's so nice to have you with us. And Staten Island, is rising and always has been. And nowadays, with the Hispanic community coming to life, with Abelardo Alaman and
Muy bien,
Maribel
Dennis.
Espinosa Hernandez and Yesenia Mato and so many others, leaders and people who are bringing people into the organizational structure. So we will not continually be a forgotten borough, but that's what my question is all about. For years, we've been known as the forgotten borough. What in particular would you do as the mayor to help Staten Island relative to this situation of having been a forgotten borough for so long?
Yes, I know that Staten Islanders have felt that way for a long time. I actually worked out of Staten Island Borough Hall during the De Blasio administration because I was one part of the team that was in charge of City Hall in your borough. So I actually got to commute to and from Staten Island for an entire week, and my love only grew for the borough because growing up, actually, my parents had many friends there and still do. And there's a lot that I want to do. I already mentioned housing and mental health facilities, but I want to be able to bring bus rapid transit. And actually, in you mentioning all of those amazing Latinos on Staten Island, let me tell you that my parents hail from a country named Colombia, where the capital, Bogota, is actually the golden standard for bus rapid transit. And so I've been able to see how that works my entire life. And believe me, if you can do it in the Andes, you can do it on Staten Island. And make sure that it is much easier for Staten Islanders to get around the island, and possibly even make sure that we get folks to Manhattan in ways that are not just the ferry and by car. So I want to make sure that there is increased accessibility to and from the island. I also want to make sure that the waterfront is being enjoyed by Staten Islanders. So, in terms of resiliency and in terms of flooding, like what we experienced in my district during Hurricane Ida, I want to make sure that our flood maps are updated, that we are funding all of the resiliency efforts that are necessary with experts, so that what happened during Superstorm Sandy to Staten Island never happens again. That is something that I'm very aware of, especially given my personal experience with Hurricane Ida, which was the one that ravaged us so bad that former President Biden came to visit my district. I want to make sure that we are protecting parks. And bringing urban agriculture to NYCHA in order to help Staten Islanders there. I also want to make sure that in terms of NYCHA, to kind of also combine a little bit with the housing, that we're not warehousing those apartments in order to open up the list of people who have been waiting for apartments. So I think there's a lot of investment, and especially in making sure that we're helping Staten Islanders open small businesses so that we can help the economy and have a better cash flow among Staten Islanders, especially as the borough continues to change and flourish.
Thank you. We got about 6 minutes left, and I know you're going to want to answer both of these questions. So
Okay.
let me go to Rich.
I can stay a little longer. I don't know,
Well, we'll go to Richard first, then Maribel.
Good evening. Thanks for participating in our forum tonight. Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Thank you for the question. I will protect the sanctuary city law. I'm a big believer in that immigrants only strengthen our economy and only improves our diversity, and therefore everything that's delicious that comes along with it. Whether it's the food, the music, the block parties. What we want is to be able to emulate what coexistence and what peace looks like for the rest of the world. And yes, that includes on Staten Island. So I think the way that the sanctuary laws are written are right, in which we do cooperate with ICE in instances where heinous crimes have been committed. But as mayor, I want to make sure that we are keeping ICE out of our schools, out of our hospitals, out of our places of worship, out of our public institutions in general, so that those can continue to be safe havens for everyone. My additional criticism of the current administration in this area is the fact that we're also a town with, I think, 7 law schools, and not once did we tap into that as a resource in order to help our migrants be able to actually apply for the asylum that they're seeking. And now we're seeing we're seeing the consequences of that. I think the mayor of the city of New York should be the loudest voice, the biggest cheerleader for work permits for our immigrant population. This is why I want to have a formal street vending system. This might not be as much of an issue on Staten Island as it is on other boroughs, but where there are food deserts, which is in certain corners of Staten Island, we want to go back to the way former Mayor LaGuardia created public markets and would help the migrants actually be a part of the economy in that way. So formalizing this actually, by my conservative estimate, would generate around an additional $500 million in sales tax revenue, which is a nice chunk of change for the city, especially in the wake of the possibility of Trump funding being removed from the city. This is why I want to hire a chief revenue officer for the first time, so that there's someone who's creatively thinking about how we proactively generate more revenue for the city. Also, why I want to do property tax reform, which is something very key for Staten Island, because many of you are paying more in property taxes than a lot of the more affluent places and neighborhoods in New York City. So, for example, I actually am a rent stabilized tenant in Jackson Heights, Queens, and through my rent, I pay $5,000 a year in property tax. But someone who owns a brownstone in Park Slope only pays $3,000 a year in property tax. And that's not fair. There's the same difference between many homeowners on Staten Island and folks in Manhattan. So we want to make sure that the city's actually complying with the property tax law so that folks can afford to stay in their homes. And I realize I digressed a little bit, but you know.
Important stuff. We'll have the last question now, and 3, 4 minutes or so from Maribel.
Good evening, Senator Jessica Ramos. Had I known you were in Albany, I would have stalked you because I'm in Albany too.
Oh,
So, but thank you for joining us this evening. What my question is regarding childcare. Obviously, childcare is a big issue for many New Yorkers. Staten Islanders are no different. So my question is, what are your efforts in making sure that all 3K Staten Islanders have a seat? And also, what are you going to do about providing affordable childcare for struggling families?
thank you for this question. This is one of my biggest passions as a person, as a mom, as a legislator. I want to talk a little bit about what I've done, what I'm doing right now, and what I would like to do as your mayor. So, as I shared, I'm a mother. I've experienced the hardship of unaffordable and inaccessible childcare, and I was very proud to be a part of the team at City Hall that delivered on universal pre-K. This is actually a little more complicated than people think because it's a big interagency effort between the Department of Education and a lot of the other agencies that make sure that we have the appropriate facilities and that we're paying child care centers on time. This is a big problem that City Hall has had in not paying their contractors on time. So making sure that we are starting those contract renovations a lot earlier in the procurement process is going to be key to providing parents with the peace of mind that their children are in a safe place and that they're not just going to have to figure out different childcare arrangement the following year. That's why I'm so proud of the work that we did with Universal Pre-K. I mentioned how we've expanded eligibility largely with the bill that I have carried for universal childcare for the past 4 terms I've been in office. It's called the Early Learning Child Care Act. And it's predicated on the work we did with Universal Pre-K in actually building out a system that not only makes sure that we're providing parents with the opportunity, but that we're also paying childcare workers living wages and providing them with student loan forgiveness. I'm also hoping that we see this as an opportunity to give our children all the supports they need to give them the best possible start to academic excellence. I believe that during the child care period before pre-K, this is where we can have experts, child care educators, who can identify learning and developmental disabilities earlier on so that we can get them the appropriate helps that they need. This right now, during this state budget, I am this close to finally doing away with the minimum wage requirement for childcare in New York State. A lot of people actually don't know. For example, the women that we see selling candy on the train, the migrant women with the children, they do not qualify for childcare services because childcare requires that the parent make at least minimum wage. And actually, inspired by their struggle, I have been championing in the budget for us to make sure that we are doing away with the minimum wage requirement so that any parent can be able to find childcare. I also want to inject technology where possible. I don't we're able to open up an app and make a reservation at a restaurant. We should be able to open up an app and be able to find a childcare worker within a certain radius of where we live in case of an emergency, and especially for parents who don't work a regular 9 to 5. So construction workers, night workers, all sorts of people who don't have a typical schedule. And I want to be able to do this proactively in order to give us the best possible return on our investment. And it is a big part of the economic recovery that I see and the care economy that I want to build out in order to help our city bounce back, because we still haven't from the pandemic and there's an imminent recession.
Well, on that note, well, thank you so much, Senator. Really, really appreciate you taking the time with us. Best of luck on the campaign trail and have a good night and keep up the great work in Albany.
Well, thank you all. You guys keep up the great work as well. Keep your head up. I know we're all going through tough times. I've actually been talking to people about how they've been having trouble sleeping because of all of the things that have been happening at the federal level. Just remember to look for the helpers. Remember you're not alone, and that we're all part of the resistance. Stay strong.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night. Buenas noches.
All right. So, for we've been going back to back. If people need to stretch, get some food, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. But, the hits keep coming because we have our next candidate in the room. I'm just trying to, Mike. Okay, I can hear you now and see you. How are you doing? I'm
okay.
very pleased.
I'm here. I'm trying to get a 13-year-old out for her basketball practice. So I'm just like just give me 30 seconds, y'all.
Okay.
Good. So far, so good. Who's that one coming? This is Michael Blake. Janos, have we lost sound for everybody?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Good, I'm glad. I got to say, every candidate who spoke to us so far is knocking it out of the park. It's a tough decision we're all going to be having to make. And I want to remind people, please pay your dues so you can vote in our endorsement votes, which will take place in the end of May or during the middle of May. You can't vote after having heard all this stuff unless you've a
Okay, Dennis,
dues-paying
we're ready.
member. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Dennis. All right. Well, I'm really pleased, former Assembly Member Michael Blake, to welcome you to the Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. We've been hearing from candidates all night, and we're excited to spend the next 20 minutes with you. So the way this works is take a couple minutes for opening statement, and then we have 5 questions lined up from executive committee members, and I'll throw it to them once you're done with your opening remarks. So thank you, and take it away.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Jam. Good to see you all again. Good evening, everybody. Hope that you are doing incredibly well. Michael Blake, running to be your next mayor of New York City because we deserve more and we deserve better. Fundamentally, I'm coming to you on the premise that it is simply too expensive in New York City, that we have a scenario where we have people that want to go too far left and too far right as opposed to figuring out answers in the middle, that we're not being serious about how we're addressing housing and everything from property tax reform to how to ensure that we're making people have a better chance to have a home, to making sure that we actually are countering all the noise that is coming out of DC in a very thoughtful and impactful way. For those that I'm meeting for the first time, I served as an assemblyman for 6 years. I led the effort around the My Brother's Keeper program, which is still the only one in the country to help young men go to school and graduate from school. I led the effort on diversity in medicine that ensured that we have more people of color and women as doctors across New York State. We led the effort when it comes to the prompt pay bill, which was a bipartisan bill so that businesses that are below 300 employees get paid faster in New York State as opposed to having to wait too long. Prior to this, I had the opportunity to serve under President Obama. I worked in the White House for 2.5 years. I think we can all appreciate that it would be great to have a real president as opposed to this fascist foolishness that is happening right now in DC. I'm showing what can be possible. And I'm coming here very simply because as the only candidate in the race who has White House experience, State House experience, and local experience, that we need someone who has all three to be best prepared for this moment. I'm very focused on how do we accomplish three different things. First of all, the true cost of living. Being mindful that we can actually increase wages, because when people make more money, they're able to have more impact in their community. To have universal child care, because we understand that child care expenses and housing expenses are the two most critical in lives. And then how do we go further in ensuring that we're training the next generation of individuals from Staten Island across the city? When it comes to affordable housing, how do we have serious property tax reform? How do we have a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 that is dedicated on middle-class housing? How do we stop using credit scores that is barring people from getting a rent or home ownership opportunity? Being very intentional around education and saying that we can have civics, financial literacy in our schools, as well as mental health, that we can have greater public safety while also ensuring that body cameras are utilized, while mental health professionals are addressing the mental health concerns, that we can have faster and on-time trains and buses, and we can ensure that there's greater connectivity when someone is on the ferry and also mainland. We've been able to generate support across the city, everything from the Three Bridges Democratic Club to Reverend Tony Baker out there in Staten Island, to the work we've done in the Bronx with Elvis Santana, to the mobilization that we're building across the city, and saying very simply that if we are ready for a new generation of leadership, not one that has been corrupted as Eric Adams has been, that one you can be proud of, that actually understands that we can find solutions in the middle. My name is Michael Blake, and I'm asking for your vote and your endorsement to be the next mayor of New York City. And I look forward to your questions at this time.
Great. Thank you so much. Our first question comes from Abelardo.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in New York City, and especially in Staten Island, which has limited healthcare resources?
Well, first and foremost, we need to make sure we do the steps to ensure that there's a public hospital again, because you need one in Staten Island. In the same way that they have the protections that are happening in Brooklyn and the focus of that from SUNY downstate, you need that there. Second, we have to make sure we're addressing on OPCs and overdose prevention centers, because if we're not serious about that, we can't address the mental health crisis, to your question, Abelardo. Third, we need to get funding that comes from the state around the opioid settlement fund, which if we did that, as well as reimbursing our nonprofits on time, then we can seriously address what's been happening around the mental health crisis. Because you can't have someone that is getting help for one night and then back out on the street the next day. That's not addressing anything. Fourth, we got to address the stigma. And we got to be real clear about this. A stigma still exists when it comes to addressing mental health. And I'm saying often, if your foot was broken, you would go to the doctor. If someone in your family was battling cancer, they would go to the doctor. But somehow when it comes to mental health, people don't want to talk about it. Every single one of us needs to have the opportunity to address the mental health concerns. And I talk about this regularly. I have an exceptional man of color to be able to talk through, because there's nothing wrong about having someone that you can engage with. And if we do it in these serious ways, you will also simultaneously improve public safety. You will improve the opportunity of people feeling more safe and secure. And the individuals who need this help, by expanding out the work of the 988 hotline, can be serious in this regard. We can seriously and immediately address what's happening with mental health, and understand that addressing mental health simultaneously will address violence and interruption in our communities. And if we do all of those at the same time, we can be serious in doing this work as a mayor. I've seen this in my work throughout the Bronx, seen this throughout the work in the city. And if given the chance to be your mayor, we can do this from City Hall.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next question comes from our president, Ali.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
My question is, last year the city of Yes became law, while Staten Islander need more affordable housing. How would you address local concern about law's impact on the island infrastructure?
Around infrastructure, I'll make sure I hear the last part of the question.
Yes.
Yes.
How would you address local concern about the law's impact on Staten Island infrastructure?
Absolutely. And I love your plants, Ali. It's very impressive to see right there. You got a great visual right there to your left, right there. First, let's talk about City of Yes and then the impact as it relates to the infrastructure. City of Yes did not go far enough in actually addressing the core problem of how are we building effectively so that more people can have homes affordably. It didn't do either of those two things. By Mayor Adams' own admission, it's not going to build more homes and it's not going to be more affordable. So they actually didn't address the two reasons why they wanted to do this. Now, as it relates to the infrastructure, in particular in Staten Island, what we can't have is a scenario where air rights are being taken away, parking lots and those places are being taken away without actually engaging with you on the ground on what is it that you want in your community, as opposed to developers and landlords just building out for the purpose of them making money itself. Now, if we are doing this in a regard where development is happening in partnership with community-based partners, where the incentives for developing is ensuring that working class and middle class family members are actually able to get those units, because again, that was not a guarantee that we saw happen there, as well as not being disruptive to the infrastructure concerns while also renovating and rehabilitating the infrastructure that's happening in Staten Island as well. If you do all of those at the same time, then that would seriously address and improve and work with you from a local perspective. Too often what is happening is you have individuals in City Hall, whether it be the mayor, the speaker, and others, who are implementing policies without actually talking to you and working with you on how does it actually work to be more effective here. And so it is impossible to build out the amount of units that they want to build out through the City of Yes without effectively collaborating with you as residents, as well as ensuring that there's a long-term approach, not just for 5 years, but for 50 years around this. And so to your question, hopefully you're hearing a very direct and specific answer around this, that we have to be very intentional around how is it not being disruptive to your local needs? How is it actually reimagining the infrastructure that needs that you have there on the ground? And actually do the two things that it needs to do, which by its own admission did not do, which was build enough for the growing population that exists and ensure that it's actually affordable. It is the reason why, Mr. President, I've said regularly that there needs to be a local median income, not an AMI, because if we do that, then you can ensure that at the end of the day, after you've done all this building, that it's not destructive to the people of Staten Island, but then you're actually able to afford it. What is the purpose of doing all this if people can actually have the homes? And so I want to make sure that we're not in a scenario where we're just knocking down buildings for the purpose of knocking them down, that we're not just taking away air rights for the purpose of taking them away, for the purpose of someone else to make money off of you. That is wrong. It is unacceptable. That is not how it should be. It has to actually address, are there empty plots of land that you as the community are saying you want to move forward on the building of, and or are there air rights that you as the community actually want to implement? That is how we effectively do this and do this much more intentional.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll turn to our past president, Dennis.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Assemblyman Blake, for joining us. It's great that someone from the White House and the State House has come out here to Staten Island. And I imagine you have heard and witnessed over the course of your career that Staten Island is often called the forgotten borough. Yeah. And we're trying to do whatever we can to make that not the case. But we hope that you can give us a commitment. And I wonder what one commitment that you would make specifically for the people of Staten Island relative to rectifying that situation.
I would have an increase of personnel that would be in my administration that would come from Staten Island at higher levels, so you can actually have a voice at the table. I can tell you as someone from the Bronx that I have a very similar feeling that you have, Dennis, that too often we are being told that Manhattan comes first, second, and third, and we should just listen. And that's not how I will move, right? That's not how I operate. And fundamentally, the way you change the paradigm of showing someone the seriousness of who you see them, or who are the people that you put in place and what budget do you put around that. And so the most important thing that I can do is not talk about ideas and commissions and broad strokes. It is, who are the people from your neighborhoods that are qualified, capable, and ready to be put into place and then given budgets to make sure that you're able to implement the vision. That shows a level of seriousness around this. And I do say very directly, you have a lot of people in this race who could have done a lot of things to help you all right now, and they're not. And they are now telling you, let me be your mayor and I'm going to fix this. And my question is, well, why didn't you? Why didn't you actually do these things you said you wanted to do? You're in these positions of power right now. And so, Dennis, to your question, I feel this every day as a Bronxite. Every single day. And if there's one community that can appreciate what you all feel, it's us. And if you want to have a serious seat at the table, it would be me. I know there are some who have conveyed their support to the former governor. I will say that he's a Queens, Manhattan guy, right? It is what it seems to be. Go with the Bronx guy if you really want to have a seat at the table.
Thank you. Well, we
Hey,
can certainly take you up on, we have a lot of talent on this Zoom call if you want to fill your administration in the future. So we'll take you up on that.
Absolutely. Only if I can get Peg to smile at me. Peg is very focused in the questions and answers right here. So I'm going to do my work right now, right there.
Well, next question goes to Richard.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Yes, I do, but there's still changes that need to be made because at the end of the day, we are a city of immigrants. That's what makes us who we are. And we have allowed Republicans to make the immigration conversation a Latino only one. It is Latino, it's Caribbean, it's African, it's Eastern European, it's Asian, it's all of us who are part of this. And we have allowed the other side to demonize this conversation. What are the things we need to do differently, to your question, Richard, in that regard? First, we have to ensure that when there are serious commitments of individuals who have committed crimes, then yes, that person needs to be held accountable, and obviously you have to take accountability on that. Full stop. Extended, though, is we have to still be a city that embraces different diversity. We can't say we're a diverse city. You only become diverse by embracing our immigrants. And so how do we do that? We do that by empowering our nonprofits that are bringing in our immigrants. In particular, let's be clear, the data suggests that Venezuela being number one, but thereafter is actually Russia and China. People would not actually know that given the rhetoric that's happening from the Republicans. And so therefore, that means that we have to ensure that the nonprofits are welcoming in particular, our women, children, and families who need that support, and that you have language access that then welcomes people in to be more thoughtfully supported. Let's also then go a step further. It is nonsensical that people, Democrats in particular, will scapegoat immigrants and say that the reason why people in Staten Island are not getting support is because of immigrants. It was a $115 billion budget before the migration crisis, and you weren't doing anything. So the notion that now somehow the reasons why we can't help people is because immigrants are here doesn't make any logical sense. The reality is we have to make sure that we are embracing and doing it thoughtfully, processing people to get the support that they need. Extended to the question, Richard, when you have 180,000 immigrants that are going before legal hearings without legal representation, it is creating a greater crisis at hand because you're not then supporting those that are here. And I will take it back to my previous point. As we are watching every single day, what is happening in DC has absolute impact on us locally. And if we're not serious about the attacks and the proposed conversations of a travel ban that President Trump is now talking through, that will have even greater impact on a city like our own. And so to your question, we should be a sanctuary city, which means we are welcoming of people in need and welcoming of people of our diversity. There is nothing wrong about that. What has to be done then is ensuring that the absolute small minority percentage of individuals who are committing infractions are held accountable. But for the overwhelming majority, we are embracing them. The food that we eat, the stores that we shop at, the schools that we go to, we are made better because of our immigrant communities. It is not a narrative of crime going up because of immigrants. That is actually nonsensical. It's actually inaccurate. ICE has no business at our schools, our places of worship, and our community centers. It is disruptive. It is leading to a percentage decline when it comes to school attendance. And I will say this as a son of immigrants myself, and also as a reverend. I do remind people, regardless of faith backgrounds, that Jesus himself was an immigrant man of color who was a refugee in a distant land. And so when we start talking about who we are as a people, the notion that we're not embracing our people because Republicans are trying to make us be divided is not who we are. And the reality is that we have a current mayor who is going along with unconstitutional behavior to keep himself out of jail, full stop. You have other candidates in the race who are unwilling to speak the truth about this because they're afraid they will lose votes. You have a former governor who did not put enough legal protections to ensure people could have the opportunities to be here right now. And I do believe, Richard and all, that this is one of those topics, similarly with public safety, similar housing, where my unique experience creates an opportunity for you to ask yourself, on January 1st, 2026, who is ready to lead the city immediately? Because of everything that we have endured from DC, because of the cuts that are coming, because of the unconstitutional behavior that's happening, and as it relates to immigration, that we cannot be in a space where we are banning people from coming here out of the fear of retaliation. New York City has been made New York City because of our immigrants. And the notion that we would walk back away from that principle because of fear is not who we are.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We have our final question in just about 2 to 3 minutes, if you could. Maribel, kicking over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Blake, and thank you for being here with us this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Blake, as you know, many families struggle with many things, food, housing, but childcare is one of those things that many New Yorkers face. Staten Islanders are, also included in that list. What is your take? What will be your take in supporting families with affordable childcare? And what is your guarantee to Staten Islanders making sure they have a seat for every 3K child come your mayoral run?
Well, I felt like you were about to say mayoralty. You could say it right now. That means we're going to win this thing. So first, we need universal child care. When you think about how child care and housing are the two fundamental expenses that exist in New York City, we have to be serious about addressing that. How do we do this? When under Mayor de Blasio, he was able to go out there and implement 3K and pre-K because of federal funds. One of the reasons there's been the hesitation of moving forward is because people have been wondering how do we pay for these bills? We can have universal child care by doing two specific things that would not raise a dime of taxes on any person on this line. Number one, a pied à terre tax, which is a tax on vacant units for the individual who does not have a primary residence here, but they're effectively just holding a house here. That's primarily in Manhattan, quite frankly. We're talking about Russian diplomats and others. That would generate $300 to $400 million of revenue to be able to pay for programs such as this. Second, the bloated overtime that was happening throughout city government, by their own admission that they were not tracking. Very specifically, you had $1.4 billion in overtime at the NYPD specifically, which had not anything to do around public safety at all, but just around mismanagement. So the money is there to pay for this. Now, Maribel, go to a step further. I would actually know how to count seats as opposed to Eric Adams. Because when you look at the nonprofits and the childcare centers that were hurt just now, they were hurt because they were told that their attendance rates were low and their school rates were low, which actually was not the case. So if we counted the numbers accurately, we would make sure that nuestros niños and others would have that support in that regard. And to do that, then we have to provide grants and faster reimbursements to nonprofits that are providing the support. We do this. Why? Because then families are able to take the jobs that they want. You are able to go to the amazing Staten Island restaurants that you want to. You're able to live your life regularly because you're not wondering, how can I watch my child or more than one child for that? Data just came out that stated that for a family in New York City, that you have to be at $69 an hour for a family of two just for it to be at living wage. It's the reason why I do believe we have to have a threshold of getting to living wage, not minimum wage. We have to help people make more money to pay these bills. And then lastly, it is around the framing and the premise of the humanity of who we are. I have said very clearly, I am focused in making sure that we're protecting the most vulnerable, being our children through universal child care, protecting our most vulnerable and our seniors with Medicaid, and ensuring that everyone in between has an opportunity to realize their dreams. Maribel, I was that kid who, born with a heart murmur at North Central Bronx Hospital, public schools K through 12. I was able to make it because when my mom was working multiple jobs and my daddy was a janitor at St. Barnabas Hospital, Miss Gloria looked after me. And it was the Puerto Rican, Dominican, Mexicano crew with the Jamaicans and the Guyanese all rocking together. That's how we did it. But we also had an incredible community center that was paid for through funds to make sure everyone had that chance. And so I'm giving you the commitment as the person who created the My Brother's Keeper program, that I could say to you, I have shown a seriousness of ensuring that our young children have an opportunity. And if you give me the chance to be your mayor, if you rank me first, or if not second, the opportunity to show you what can be possible here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that answer and your time with us, Assemblymember Blake. Good luck on the campaign trail. Have a great night. We really appreciate you taking time with us.
Thank you, everyone. Again, Michael Blake, our website is blakefornyc.com, so you can learn more about what we're doing and what we're building right now. And I'm going to do some real fun thing. Give me 10 seconds. Just do like this, everybody. Just raise your hands. I know we're all virtual. Just trust me. Just trust me, everybody. Just do like that. All right. Do like that. All right. I just shook everybody's hand. All right. Have a great night, Staten Island. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking time for me to be with you. Take care. God bless.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. We've got 2 candidates left. Everybody, you're doing so great. We've had unbelievable that so many people have been with us throughout every candidate. And now here we have our comptroller. Whoop. Brad, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming
Yes.
through loud and clear.
Great.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. I think you caught the tail end of that, but let me formally welcome you to the Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. Really appreciate you having you here. The way we've been doing it tonight is we've been spending 20 minutes with everybody. So we'd love for you to give a couple minutes just to talk about yourself in this run. And then we have 5 questions lined up from executive committee members. So I'll be passing it to them and I'll be, keeping track of time generally for you to make sure we cover all that ground. So thank you. And with that, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thank you, Janos, and thank you, Staten Island Democratic Association. I'm New York City Controller Brad Lander. I'm coming to you from virtual Snug Harbor. I guess this is a little pandering to Staten Island to show you a Staten Island location, but I never do with any place I haven't been multiple times. Look, I'm running for mayor to deliver a safer, more affordable, more livable, and a better run city for all New Yorkers. To be an honest and effective mayor who you can trust, to govern City Hall effectively, and to actually deliver on the things that Staten Islanders and all New Yorkers are fed up with: the sky-high cost of living, not feeling safe on the subways and in our neighborhoods, and having a corrupt City Hall that has betrayed us, that sold us out for a pardon, but even before that was failing to deliver on the things New Yorkers need. I think part of the reason why people shifted to voting for Trump in November in New York more than a lot of other places was feeling like city government doesn't have their backs, isn't fighting for working families, isn't delivering on issues of safety and affordability, and that our government is corrupt. And that's what we can and must fix. Now, partly we need a mayor who will stand up and fight for the city and its values. That's what I did a few weeks ago when Elon Musk stole $80 million from the bank account of the city of New York. It was my office who discovered that, who rang the alarm bell. who went after Citibank to get our overdraft fee back, and then forced the law department into court to sue to get every penny of that 80 million that Elon Musk and Donald Trump are trying to steal from us. And that's what you'll have in me as a mayor, is someone who stands up and fights for our funding, for our families, for our values. But what you'll also have is a mayor who governs this city effectively so we can live up to our values, because we can't fight Trump effectively when we've got mentally ill folks sleeping on the stoops of our buildings or on subway grates in our neighborhoods. We can't fight Trump effectively when young people can't find a home they can afford to buy in our neighborhoods, even if they're teachers or firefighters or cops or public hospital nurses. We can't fight Trump effectively when our own city hall is rampant with corruption. So we've got to get our own house in order and govern the city effectively. Of the candidates in the race who share your values, who are deeply committed to livable neighborhoods, to affordable housing, to great public schools, to the rights of immigrants, to all the things that you're hearing candidates commit to, of all those candidates, I'm the one with executive leadership experience, having run a big city agency. My audits and pension fund management and municipal finance work have saved the city over $2.5 billion. And the pension funds have grown to record levels, guaranteeing retirement security for any municipal retirees on this call. I rejected the Medicare Advantage contract that Adams tried to push through to privatize healthcare for our seniors. At the same time that those pension funds have grown, we've divested from fossil fuels, invested in the creation and preservation of more affordable housing than any past controller, dramatically grown investments with Black, Latino, women, and Asian investment managers, and had the backs of workers as well. My top priorities in this race are to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, so our city is safer and more humane, to significantly confront the affordable housing crisis, which has been the work of my whole life, protecting tenants, making affordable homeownership possible again, and bringing down the cost to rent and to own, to achieve universal childcare for not just threes, but twos, and expand after-school programs. I proposed the first ever Mayor's Office of Workers' Rights to make sure working people are protected, something I've really pioneered in the Controller's Office, and I hope we can talk about a little more here. But most fundamentally, to make city government actually run better, because when we're taking care of taxpayer dollars, when we're not letting NYCHA residents wait months and months for the basic repairs, when we're getting the garbage picked up and keeping the neighborhoods clean and keeping our parks clean and delivering for New Yorkers, that's when we're living up to our values, and that's what gives us the power to stand up and fight for them as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. The first question will come from Abelardo.
Good evening, Mr. Controller Lander. And the
Good
first
evening,
question
Abelardo.
is,
Nice to
how are
see
you?
you.
Nice to see you too, brother. What is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in New York City, and especially on Staten Island, which has limited healthcare resources?
Yeah, such an important question. I don't think we've collectively grappled with the mental health crisis that grew through and out of the pandemic. We had plenty of mental health issues before, to be sure, but the pandemic really just broke something, and we have not seriously reckoned with it. We had a weakened system already because Andrew Cuomo eliminated 1,000 inpatient psychiatric beds with his Medicaid cuts. And then you add the pandemic to that, and we got walloped. So I got a few plans for this. First, as you heard, the number one commitment I'm making in this race is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We're going to do that with a policy called Housing First. You might have seen that there was just a report this week about Eric Adams' homeless sweeps. Over the past 6 months, they forcibly removed over 2,300 people from where they were sleeping. 0 of them got connected to permanent housing. Almost none even went into shelter for one night. And 80% of the places they swept, they had just swept before. Meanwhile, cities like Salt Lake City and Houston and Denver are using this model where instead of trying to push people into shelter, knowing that they could often have fear or be resistant, you connect them directly from the street to a supportive housing or SRO unit. And tonight, there are about 2,000 people with serious mental illness sleeping on the streets of our city or in our subways. Meanwhile, there's 2,500 vacant supportive housing and SRO units. that they're just not eligible for, because we try to say you have to get ready to be in that housing first, and then people just stay on the street. So I've laid out a really detailed 75-page ready on day one plan of mayoral coordination, a continuum of care, some expanded ability to have people involuntarily hospitalized when they need it, but mostly that housing first plan. I've also got plans for mental health in our schools. Day one, get rid of cell phones. My mom's an elementary school guidance counselor. We need guidance counselors and social workers in every school. We can confront the mental health crisis that the city is facing on Staten Island, because we got plenty of schools there that can be helping our kids, and by ending the street homelessness for folks with serious mental illness.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from our president, Ali.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Ali. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, sir. Likewise. Last year, the city of Yes became law. While Staten Island need more affordable housing, how would you address local concern about our infrastructure?
Thank you for this question. It's so important. I think unfortunately we kind of have polarized a sense of the need for for more housing to confront the affordability crisis, and making strong, great, livable neighborhoods with adequate infrastructure. And that does not have to be a conflict, quite the opposite. When you work with neighborhoods to develop the infrastructure, the open space, the transit, people have a lot more ability to support the affordable housing that we need. And I'll point as proof to this, just down the street from my house. It's the area around the Gowanus Canal in Brooklyn that I represented when I was in the city council. That had been an industrial neighborhood, so there were a lot of abandoned one-story buildings. And for many years, people said, let's get the canal cleaned up and develop some housing there. But people were resistant, because some of them, felt like, well, we need infrastructure to deal with flooding. We've got flooding in this neighborhood. We're going to need some new transit. We're going to need some new open space. And the public housing residents nearby need investments to fix their homes as well. So we developed an agenda on all those things. And we went and said to City Hall, we're willing to see some significant new development around the canal, even in that case at heights taller than, the 3-story row house that many of us live in, if and only if we get those infrastructure investments to deal with flooding, we get new open space, we get some affordable artist studios to keep Gowanus mixed use and creative, we get the renovation of the public housing nearby. And by sticking together, we developed a plan that did all of those things. As a result, the community board voted overwhelmingly in favor of the plan, something that is pretty rare in a rezoning like that, because all the things that folks wanted were included in the plan in those infrastructure investments. So right now, 8,000 new units of housing, 3,000 of them genuinely affordable to low-income and working-class families, are rising just down the street, not just down the street from Snug Harbor, but just down the street from my row house in Brooklyn. And meanwhile, there's 100 new affordable artist studios that rent at $300 a month. There's a whole bunch of new small businesses, a $200 million investment in the public housing, a $175 million investment in sewers to deal with flooding, and a Gowanus oversight task force to make sure that every one of those infrastructure and neighborhood commitments is met. And people feel good, by and large, about the model of growth we have. So we can have a lot more affordable housing with strong, well-preserved neighborhoods. That's a model of growth people can actually see themselves in. One last point here is the reason I've put affordable home ownership so much at the center of my affordable housing plan is that that's one more way that people could believe they'll be included in our plans for growth and affordability. When Meg and I bought our co-op in Brooklyn in 1996, it was $125,000. And that's why we were able to raise our kids in Brooklyn. And families these days just can't do that. But with the right approach to housing growth, we can make that possible again. And then people will support the affordability that we need in Staten Island and in all other of our neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Dennis.
Yes, it's so nice to see you again, Comptroller. And I like the background. It looks like the Chinese Scholars Garden on Staten Island. It's not
It is
hard.
the Chinese. It is the Chinese Scholars Garden on Staten Island. I
And I
mean, it's
know
a picture of it. I try to like pick a background of a place I've actually been. And when I say
absolutely.
a more livable city, this is like, whatever. Staten Island's got these amazing, beautiful places that we're lucky to have, and I want to invest in and preserve.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I wanted to point that out, and I
Thank
knew
you.
it was a picture because those two guys over your left shoulder haven't moved for the last half hour. So, at any rate, we have some fabulous people on Staten Island, and you know a lot of them: Bobby Digi and Josette Carter Williams, and in social services and youth services, Jasmine Robinson and Abu S.I.D.A in the political realm as district leaders, Cindy Vorsby and Radhakrishna Mohan working for years and years helping people, Dave and Sally Jones and the peace movement. And notwithstanding, and I know you know all these people, and that's a plus, and thank you for that. But notwithstanding all the work that these folks do, and they're just representative of all the other folks here that I'm not naming, and I hope you won't be mad at me, folks. But notwithstanding all of that, we're still considered the forgotten borough. And my question to you is, as mayor, what would one commitment be that you would make specifically for the people of Staten Island?
Thank you for that. And I really agree with you. And, you have seen me there a lot, right? Like you mentioned Dave Jones. I was in court with Dave and Debbie on those hideous, when they got that bullshit pardon my language, prosecution. I was out there in court with you a lot of times. I think I'm the only candidate who I've seen out petitioning on Staten Island. I was at the ferry last week doing petitioning out there because I think it's important to show your commitment to all of the, to all the boroughs. I was at the Black History Month event at First Central a couple of weeks ago. I'm having breakfast actually tomorrow morning with one of your elected officials. So, it's a different place than the other four boroughs, but a really special place and one that we want to invest in. So, in terms of commitments, I think I'll go with the cultural ones because I'm sitting here in Snug Harbor. I think the cultural institutions, you got the big ones like the Met or the American Museum of Natural History, they get a lot of resources. But some of the ones like Snug Harbor, as much a gem as it is, have to fight. They get budget cuts every year. I'm going to end that silly part of the budget dance where our libraries and cultural institutions get whacked, and then the council members have to fight to restore them. And I love when you can do public events at the cultural institutions as well. Like Brooklyn Museum has a first Saturday event every month. So the first Saturday, they fill it up with music and food and cultural programming. And I know there's some of that at Snug Harbor, but I like to make sure there's some additional resources because I think those kind of cultural events really make the city livable, bring people together, build that kind of civic strength that was damaged during the pandemic. So that's one specific Staten Island commitment I'll make for sure.
All right.
Donald.
Yes. Next question is Richard. I'm sorry, I just lost where Richard. Yeah, there you are.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I'm so glad you're asking it. It's a credit to the Staten Island Democratic Association. This is the greatest immigrant city the world has ever known. And that's, new, more recent and older immigrants. Look, I'm the highest ranking Jewish elected official in New York City government. What this city has been for my people who came as immigrants is extraordinary. We spent, 2,000 years getting the shit kicked out of us all around the world. And then this immigrant city made it possible for us to be safe and thrive and create economically and so many other ways. And we've got to pay it forward responsibility to this generation's asylum seekers, whether they're from Venezuela or Senegal or Bangladesh. So yes, I support the sanctuary city laws. If someone has been convicted of a serious or violent offense, then there can be coordination, but not otherwise. We don't let ICE into our schools, our shelters, our public hospitals. I called on Eric Adams at the beginning. I laid out a detailed plan for what was necessary to train frontline staff and contractors so folks would know in all those places what they're supposed to do and not do, and I'll make sure that's followed up on. One other thing that's really important is providing the resources so that community-based legal services organizations can provide the pro bono legal advice and guidance to asylum seekers to help people apply for status or work authorizations. People aren't going to be coming to the city's facilities, given the anxieties that they have. So what we need are trusted organizations like La Comena, on Staten Island and around the city, that people know to come to and will keep coming to, and have them have the legal services and case management resources to give people the advice they need in these impossible times. Not going to work for the city to do it directly, but we can provide the resources for places like La Comena and other organizations to do it.
Great, thank you. We've got one more question, Maribel. And just for time, sorry, Maribel, just for time, yeah, I think you've got like 3 or 4 minutes for this one.
Good evening, Mr. Controller. Thank you for joining us today. So New York has many issues, housing, mental health, etc. The list goes down. Childcare is included in that list of things. If elected, what would be your role in making sure that families are provided with affordable childcare? And what would you do to make sure that every 3-year-old in Staten Islander has a seat for 3K?
Staten Island actually has a fun role in the way I talk about this issue on the campaign trail, because I was literally, so my dentist is down the street from here, Gowanus Dental. If you're looking for a dentist in Brooklyn, great. I go in a few months ago, and the dental hygienist is from Staten Island. And I'm literally in the chair. She's holding the Novocaine needle. And she says, Controller, I thought every 3-year-old was supposed to have a childcare seat. Why am I 140th on the wait list for the program in my neighborhood? That was like not the shot of Novocaine that I expected. But we were 10,000 seats short this year. And thousands of them were on Staten Island. The whole idea, like the mayor said, we provided a seat. But of course, if you're a Staten Island family that got offered a seat in Queens or, that's no good to you. It has to be a seat in your neighborhood. And we did some real focus on that. So yes, I mean, childcare right now, my office did a study, on average costs $23,400 a year for a family. No family can afford that. That's a working class family, but it's a great opportunity for the city because we need to do a lot on housing affordability. But what you can do to most impact a family's budget of young family is provide that free childcare. I mean, UPK was a game changer when we do it for every 3-year-old, bring it down to 2-year-olds, and expand after school because parents don't get off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll make it possible for families to stay here. Right now, we're losing families with kids under 5 at the faster rate than anyone else. And the best thing we can do to change that is expand universal childcare. So I've laid out a pretty detailed plan. We can do 3-year-olds on the city's existing budget, and I'll commit to that. And I don't want to go back to my hygienist and not have a seat on Staten Island for her. To go to 2s, we need the state. So New Yorkers United for Childcare is running a statewide campaign to get more resources statewide. That'll take some more revenue, but it is a credible plan. I'm absolutely committed to it. I'll link to the prior answer on immigration. I was proud to help create what's called Promise NYC, which is the first program providing childcare for kids from undocumented families, because obviously those parents are working and they need childcare if we don't want them to be carrying their kids on the train. So that program is proving successful, and La Comena is one of the providers there as well. Childcare is just a huge opportunity. And I'll just conclude by, can I give a 1-minute conclusion, Janos? All right. It's really an honor to come talk with you. Thank you for organizing on Staten Island. I know Staten Island Democrats can feel lonely sometimes. but the values of this inclusive city that makes opportunities for all our families, those are democratic values, and those are Staten Island values. And I've been to the Staten Island Democratic Association, the Staten Island Association of Nonprofits, place like Snug Harbor. I know those values are Staten Island values and democratic values. I'm also in a great position to win this race. I'm building the broadest coalition from folks like Andrew Gurnardis and Liz Kruger to Jumani Williams and Antonio Reynoso. Got a broad coalition of Democratic clubs. Just this week, I got Bay Ridge Dems and Unity Dems in Riverdale. So from Bay Ridge to the Bronx, I love to add Staten Island as well. Of the Democratic candidates, I'm building the broadest coalition to beat Andrew Cuomo. We cannot replace one corrupt chaos agent with another. I'm committed to ranked choice voting, and I'll be strategic together with you to make sure we don't rank Eric or Andrew for mayor, the dream team, and with your support, support other candidates to make sure that happens, but also elevate to win this race. I'm going to have the maximum amount of money to spend, a message about a safer, affordable, and better run city that I believe will resonate on Staten Island and Brooklyn and the Bronx and Queens and Manhattan. We can bring honest, effective leadership back to City Hall, and have a city we feel proud of. And it will be honored to have your support to do it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Comptroller Lander. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking your time with us. Good luck on the campaign trail and have a great night. And thank you for shouting out Snug Harbor. We all love it there. So appreciate that.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Take good care.
All right. So unfortunately, Senator Zellner Myrie could not make it tonight. He had a late conflict come up. His campaign manager sends their regrets and is going to try to get him out to see us perhaps later in the spring, stop by an event or something like that. So just passing along that note, which means we are now at our final candidate. So congratulations to all of you. This has been, a lot of back to back, and I'm really grateful you all have stuck through it. So I'm going to unmute Assemblymember Zoran Mamdani. Zoran, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. It's a little dark where you are, but we can hear you just fine.
Yes, I apologize. I'm in a car that's about to start heading back up to Albany to try and fulfill two jobs at once.
There you go. Well, so thank you for taking the time with us. Welcome to Staten Island Democratic Association Mayoral Forum. We've been spending 20 minutes each with all of the candidates. We'll welcome you to give a couple minutes opening statement, and then we have 5 questions prepared from our executive committee members. So with that, you're a final candidate after a long night, so we're excited to hear from you. So take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Janis, and thank you so much to everyone here for going through the entirety of this meeting and having me in this moment and considering our campaign. My name is Zohran Kwame Mamdani. I represent parts of Astoria and Long Island City in the State Assembly, and I have been running for mayor now for about 4.5 months. And when this campaign began on October 23rd, it was in many ways a similar moment to the one that we are in now, where City Hall was engulfed in corruption and in chaos. And we argued that in the same necessity that we must turn the page on that, we also have to recognize that for the vast majority of working class New Yorkers, they cannot even afford to worry about what's happening at City Hall because they cannot afford to keep calling the city their home. They can't afford their rent, their childcare, their groceries, their public transit. And all of this in the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And so this campaign at its core is a campaign to make this city more affordable. It's one that is putting forward all of the tools at city government's disposal to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent stabilized tenants across the 5 boroughs, to make the slowest buses in the nation fast and free, and to deliver universal childcare to every family from whether their child is of the ages of 6 weeks to 5 years. And I know that in these past 4 months, we have surprised quite a few people with our campaign. But I just want to make clear that this is not a campaign to surprise. It's not a campaign to make a statement. It's a campaign to win. And I am confident of our ability to do so. I would say that momentum that we have shown, the momentum that has led us to be described by the New York Times as the progressive campaign with the most momentum of any in the race, is one that can be seen in our fundraising, where we raised more than $844,000 in this past filing period from about 11,000 people, more donors than every other campaign combined, that has put us on the brink of maximizing the entire public campaign finance program. We have more than 7,000 volunteers. We are averaging another 100 volunteers every day. And we have knocked on close to 100,000 doors across this city and plan to knock on 1 million by the end of this race. And so we stand poised to build the campaign that shows the clearest contrast with that of Andrew Cuomo and lets New Yorkers know that they need not simply choose between the past and the present, they can also choose the future. And that is what our campaign represents, a future where working class New Yorkers who built this city, who keep the city running, can actually afford to keep calling this city their home. And it would be an honor to have your support as we work towards that election day of June 24th in just a few months. Thank you so much, and I look forward to any and all questions.
Thank you very much. Well, our first question is going to come from Abelarda.
Good evening, Mr. Mamdani. What is your
Good evening,
plan to
sir.
what is your plan to handle the mental health crisis in New York City, and especially on Staten Island, which has limited healthcare resources?
I really appreciate the question, and I think what it speaks to is the fact that this is a crisis across our city. And it is a crisis that for far too long has gone either unaddressed or addressed with the same kind of failed policy approaches that led us to this moment. And in the next month, we are going to be putting forward a proposal from our campaign to create a new department within city government called the Department of Community Safety. It's a department that will pioneer mental health crisis intervention and homelessness outreach in the manner that we've seen be successful in other cities like Denver, Eugene, and Olympia, as well as across the country, where we would build teams specifically tasked and trained to do the work of these interventions, do the work of this outreach. And what we've seen right now is our inability to develop specific tactics, techniques, and approaches to this issue has left us with a response that is often fatal for all of the New Yorkers involved. I sat down with the family of Win Rosario, a young Bangladeshi New Yorker who called 911 himself in the midst of a mental health crisis to ask for assistance. Police officers who were trained in this kind of intervention, as per the NYPD, came to his home and killed him within 3 minutes. And that speaks to an approach that is not keeping us safe, that is not actually attuned to the circumstances of today. And we're going to do these things while also understanding that for many New Yorkers, when you talk about safety, the place people feel least safe is in our public transit system, specifically on our trains. And, I moved to New York City when I was 7 years old. I grew up in this city. And first I lived in Morningside Heights. And I remember taking the 1 train downtown to 96, switching to the 2 train, 42nd Street, Times Square, walking up the stairs and then down. And no matter what train I was going to, I would walk past what used to be a record store. It sold CDs and headphones. That store is gone now. And in most of the bustling public transit stations across our system, there are vacant commercial units. This department is going to transform those commercial vacancies into sites of service provision so that we can actually take away the blight from our system and provide the services that for too many New Yorkers seem far too out of reach. The final point I'll just say, Abelardo, is that before I was an assembly member, I was an organizer in Queens. I would go to meetings. Actually, Janos and I met at one of those meetings, I think in 2019 now. And there was another individual that I would see at those meetings. We would disagree on a number of things, but we knew each other. And I didn't see him for a few years. And then at the end of last year, I opened an article in City and State that he had co-authored. And he wrote about how he had been homeless for the last 2 or 3 years, sleeping on the trains, had been hospitalized 20 times. And what brought him back to the person that he was a thing called a clubhouse, specifically Fountain House. This was an institution that provided him with the support especially from peers, without the judgment that is typically in those situations. And we don't have a clubhouse in every neighborhood. We could, and that's going to be part of our approach to actually scale up that which has been successful and make sure that every New Yorker in every neighborhood, especially also on Staten Island, has those resources.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Next question is going to come from our president, Ali.
Good evening, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening.
How are you doing, sir? Good?
Doing well.
Thank you. My question is, last year the city of Yes became law, while Staten Island need more affordable housing. How would you address local concern about our infrastructure?
I think it's a great point, because at the core, we need to not simply build more housing, which I do believe we must, but we also have to build the infrastructure that can sustain that housing and the new residents that come with that housing. And I think that part of it is also a commitment to build affordable housing specifically. the scale of the housing crisis can be seen in 1 week last year, where the city opened up the Section 8 waitlist, where New Yorkers could apply for assistance paying their rent. And in 7 days, more than 600,000 New Yorkers applied. Now, only 200,000 or so were able to win. They got on the wait list. And now that wait list grants maybe 250 people that assistance every month. It is nothing compared to the need. So I think there needs to be more housing. I also think the city has a responsibility to build immediately affordable housing. And that's why our campaign has made a commitment for the city to build 200,000 new affordable homes over the next 10 years. And I think to pair that with the infrastructure necessary is critical. And to me, one example on Staten Island is I believe we need to bring bus rapid transit to New York City. And I think Staten Island is a great candidate for where that begins. Because what we've seen, whether you're speaking to a homeowner on Staten Island or a worker at the Amazon warehouse, the buses are simply not reliable enough, not fast enough, and often are too unaffordable for many, especially if they're taking an express bus. There is a means by which we have to transform the infrastructure and the level of service and the level of excellence in our public transit such that we are ready for every single person who wants to call New York City their home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next question is from Dennis, our past president. Oh, there you are. I couldn't see you, Dennis. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm a ghost. Okay, so Assemblyman Mamdani, it's so nice that you were joining us, and we have a fantastic. What I'm hearing is so really interesting, and I want to break it down a little bit towards Staten Island, though. As you know, I'm sure in all your travels and in your political, realm, Staten Island has for a very long time been called the forgotten borough, and it's been forgotten for good things, in the sense that we're not getting those good things, and it's remembered for the bad things, like the largest garbage dump in the world at one point. But what is there anything that you, as mayor, would commit to that would give us something specifically for the people of Staten Island, so that we would no longer be the forgotten borough?
Dennis, I really appreciate the question, because I think it's been called that because I think it's been too true for too long. And, I have been heartened in conversations that I've had with Charles Fall, an assembly member who represents parts of Staten Island, who is actually the person who introduced the necessity of bus rapid transit to me on Staten Island as something that could transform what is currently unused railway tracks into what could really be a bus highway. And that's something that I'm in the process of exploring more. I don't want to make a premature commitment, but that is something that I'm very interested in, because I think we have made public transit so unusable on Staten Island that we have in many ways necessitated people owning and driving cars. When in fact, if we provided a deeper level of service, then we could see what would be possible for people to get around. And that's one thing that I'm interested in. The other thing I would say, Dennis, is that, our campaign is a campaign about affordability. And I think Staten Island is an interesting case point, where if you look at the North Shore of Staten Island and you're looking at the eastern portion of it, you're seeing a median household income of about $30,000 a year. If you're looking at other portions of it, you're seeing it about $100,000. There's also a level of inequality that this city has ignored and has come to the fore, with now 1 in 4 New Yorkers being in poverty. So I think that we need to ensure that any of these city approaches that we're talking about, they're not piecemeal. They're not only in Manhattan, they're not only in other boroughs, but they actually can start also in Staten Island to ensure that those same resources are being devoted across the 5 boroughs. And that is a commitment I absolutely will make.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Richard.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. Do you support the city's current sanctuary city law? If yes, how will you protect immigrants from the Trump administration? And if not, what changes would you make?
Thank you for the question, Richard. I absolutely support it. If elected, I would be the city's first immigrant mayor in generations. And what I would do is ensure that our city is in full compliance with these laws that we passed and have ratified a number of times. And I would also establish an oversight commission to make sure that that compliance is across agency and across contracts, because our laws stipulate that the city cannot let ICE agents into schools, hospitals, city properties, as well as the properties of anything that is contracting with New York City. And we know under Eric Adams, there is not a full level of compliance. Additionally, I think the city has to take steps to provide legal representation towards New Yorkers who are in detention proceedings, because what we've found is an 11-fold increase in the likelihood of someone being able to stay with their family if they actually have that legal representation. And that's something the city should start to do. Finally, I will take every opportunity to fight. Recently the border czar of Trump's administration came to Albany, Tom Homan, and I took that opportunity to ask him the questions that should be top of mind for every New Yorker. Do you believe in the First Amendment? What charges did you detain a New Yorker named Mahmoud Khalil? How many more New Yorkers do you plan on detaining? Because these attacks that are taking place on New Yorkers, they are attacks on our First Amendment, they're attacks on our constitutional rights. And we've been told under Eric Adams that if we surrender and if we are cowards and collaborate with the Trump administration, then we will actually protect our city more. But what we found is that approach has left us with an $80 million hole in our budget and a complete betrayal of our values, our laws, and our people. And it is time for us to fight back.
Thank you.
Great. So we're down to our last question. We got about 5 or 6 minutes left. So if you want to answer Maribel's question and then close with whatever closing statement you'd like.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. So one of my question is regarding childcare and children in 3K. If elected, how will you make sure that every Staten Islander who is eligible for 3K has a seat? And what will you do to support families with affordable childcare?
Thank you so much, Maribel, for that question. It is at the core of this campaign. We've had a mayor who has made a promise that every family that wants a 3K seat will have it. And then he's hit them with the terms and conditions where he's given a family on Staten Island a seat in Astoria. And when they turn it down, he says, well, we offered it to them. And that's ridiculous. What we deserve is seats in neighborhoods that we actually live in. What we deserve are seats that families can actually send their children to. And my commitment is the first thing that we would do is fulfill the promise of 3K that we've seen glimpses of, and then to build on that, going into 2K and then going into childcare for children as young as 6 weeks. And I think that's necessary because the cost of childcare for a family can be around $25,000 a year. This is more than it costs to send your child to CUNY. And it's a cost that if we don't have the city intervene, it is borne by working class families, and it then pushes those families into surrounding states where they look for a place that their dollar can go a little bit further. And we've seen in Quebec, when they implemented universal childcare, they saw a 10-to-1 return on their investment because there were far more mothers than they had even anticipated that were now joining the workforce who had previously been at home providing that care. So that is a commitment that I'm ready to make, and I will do it with the level of intent and outreach that we saw under de Blasio's administration when they rolled out universal pre-K, where it wasn't simply putting an ad in a daily newspaper that not enough people read. It was putting together a team that looked closer to a campaign's get out the vote strategy and dedication than a typical government agency outreach. So that is at the core of what we want to do. And ultimately, I'll just close by saying this campaign that we have built, it's a campaign that is crossing through ideological divides across this city. It's a campaign that's speaking to people who feel left behind by the economic policies of not just this administration, but also of politics today. And it's speaking to that disillusionment and that despair by showing that there is a politics where we can fight for things. There's a politics where we actually want to vote for something on the ballot on June 24th. And our fight is for a more affordable city. And our fight is for turning the page on the disgraced mayor of today and the disgraced governor of yesterday. And it is an argument that we are making to New Yorkers that if you want someone who has cut Medicaid and stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA, who has claimed to fight for the working class and showered their rich donors with tax breaks, who has hounded the women who have courageously stepped forward to accuse them of sexual harassment, you already have that person in office. That's Donald Trump. We don't need someone with the same record in Andrew Cuomo to be our mayor. We need a new leader. We need a new style of politics that puts people before person. And that's what our campaign stands to do. And it would be an honor to have the support of everyone that is a part of this club because ultimately we want to build a campaign such that no person and no borough is forgotten. And I know that when I'm fighting for our key tenets, one of them is free buses, and that is built around the inspiration of free transit that we see on Staten Island with the boat. And we need to bring the glimpses of, as Dennis was saying, of things that have succeeded elsewhere and things that have been forgotten. We need to solve them right at the core of the problem. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Zoran. Have a great trip to Albany. Keep up the great work there, and good luck on the campaign. All right. Dennis, what are we going to?
Yes, I would like to commend our executive committee under the leadership of President Ali, Vice President Dr. Chatterjee, Executive Secretary Richard Reichard, Janos Martin, our new our new corresponding and recording secretary, and also Abelardo Alaman, our treasurer. We had a fantastic subcommittee that put this together. Very, very upscale, very, very interesting, tremendous. Over 50 people, and the candidates. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's going to be so